Hello, gentlemen. I cannot hear you. You're muted, Tom.
There we go. I thought I'd turned it on.
All right. All right. This time you're supposed to be here. Sorry to kick you off last time. All right. So the dream today is to come up with some plausible minimum viable product for an open source Planguage publishing system. And I thought I should start by defining what I mean by that and making sure it's something that is you can get behind. So Valplan is amazing. It does so many things so beautifully well. But the two things I am most passionate about, it doesn't do. One, it doesn't have a single click to publish the results on the internet so anyone can see them and comment on them and provide feedback. Secondly, it doesn't have any versioning.
Oh, it does have versioning at the detailed level of each individual statement. It's
okay,
very clear there. Now, the way the way I publish is I simply take a screen dump.
Right, like so that can work, but it this is my I realize the one thing that is different about this project than about what Valplan's usually working with this organization is that usually an organization, you have scarce resources, you try to allocate them based on what reflects the wisdom of the crowd, right? In this case, we have ill-defined resources which are allocated based on whoever has the energy to do something. And this is a thing that I have energy to do, and I want to at least try and do it in a way that is of broader utility than just myself. And so the so let me go ahead and bring up the Google Doc and let's make this a little more easy to read.
You guys can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Ernest.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So the motivations, okay, and this is, again, these are my motivations because I'm doing the work, but if I'm doing something foolish or unwise, let me know because I'd like to do something that will hopefully be of more value to people than just me. So I want to have this is I wonder if I should call this a CMS. Well, let's wait for this. So I want to have a lightweight MVP of Planguage. And then I want it to be easily publishable, which means, one click to get on the internet and document level versioning and history. Right, so the lightweight MVPs, we should discuss this first. So the things I loved most about Planguage, and let me break it into two halves. There's the definitional phase, and then there's the measurement phase, if that's not too crude of a division. So that works for you. So and what I want to do is just start with the definition phase. Long term, obviously it'd be amazing to do the metric phase, but that's a larger and longer and harder and less interesting project. So I want to do this part first while I'm motivated. It's basically the idea of having, I think the top level term used was criteria. What is the hierarchy of things in Valplan? Is it worth pulling those up, or is it worth, or do you remember them off the top of your head? Was it?
I'm not sure what you mean about hierarchy. For me, the hierarchy, a hierarchy starts with stakeholders.
Right.
It then goes to values, which are and the values are attached to functions. In other words, they are values of functions.
Right, so let me see if I can find.
And the values are derived from the stakeholders. That's why stakeholders go first.
Right.
So I don't think of it as a hierarchy.
Yeah. I remember what was the top level thing where or I could see the 5 things that we decided were important, and the critical objectives. That's the word.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's what I call values. I mean, it's values for me to say those are the values. The objectives are the values we want to have in the future.
Okay. And what I love, so the thing, the one thing that I thought was so beautiful that I want to spend my own leisure time building was this idea of you have a top level value, and then they have a which can have a hierarchical relationship.
When you say that, you mean you can take a top level value and somehow decompose it into the things that support it.
Well, I can link to other higher values and lower values, or
okay,
yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, linked relationships. Again, I'm more and more for graph metrics reasons. I'm more and more thinking of a thing is linked to a whole lot of other things, and I'm not so concerned if it's up or down or side or 60 degrees. It's
right,
just linked.
Yeah, that's a great point. So relationships to other values.
Yeah,
that can be
a more general word, relationships.
Yeah, it can be or tagged. Different types. Let's just say. Okay, and then it has a let's just start there. So we have tags, a short name. We have the ambition level, aspiration, and then they have
scale.
Well, yeah. Let me talk about the MVP. Like the most.
Okay.
The thing that's is actually sort of hyperlinked definitions.
Okay.
And to me, this is the thing that is really powerful, really hard to do elsewhere, and is one tiny step towards Ernest's grand vision of wise documents.
Okay.
They carry their own context.
Yeah.
And it's okay, this one thing, which gets close to, I mean, there's a lot here, but the thing I realized that I would love just to be able to publish a thing where it has these are our values, these are how they relate to each other, and these are the terms that are defined, which right now, editing things like that, I mean, you can kind of do that. You can kind of do that with a wiki, but it's hard, right? In that you have, some things make it easy to do footnotes, right? And the idea is that all are sort of first-class objects, right? You can look at just a definition or a list of all definitions. You look at the value of all the definitions, and that little sort of mesh network of documents and links is a really powerful idea, and it's not easy to do in a wiki, right? Either you can have a footnote or something, which is embedded in the page, but then you can't see a list of all the footnotes somewhere. And so that's the really the bare bones, absolutely. Okay, so there's the, actually no, let me make this more. Yeah, well, yeah, let's go with that. So that is what I consider version 0 of Planguage, is just a set of values, links, and definitions.
Okay.
And I think that would be a useful thing just because, all right, so that's part of the piece. And then the second piece of this is, basically making this like a CMS or a wiki, is that I have something that is here, and oh yeah, the last one is open source. That if I create this document, it's like a wiki. I push a button, I save, I publish or whatever, and then everyone can see it. And then they can see, basically just a history of previous versions. That's one better way of describing it. And open source, so that it's easy to give out, and ideally make it something that's open access, I guess, right? All over Wikipedia, but there's some very minimal bar to just anyone can browse, anyone can get in, anyone can, maybe with some level of scrutiny can make edits and suggest changes and things like that. So that's like the simplest thing that I can think of, but I think that would help us. Like my goal, I guess it's worth talking about. Okay, this is the objectives, really more than. And let me talk about my motivations here. So one is, again, and this is probably the wrong terminology, but I'll start here and move. Yeah. Right. So anyway, one is the goal is to have 50 people in Datocracy by end of 22, or goals. Let's say it's goals. In 2022. And so the idea is that right now, if I want someone to see what is Datocracy today, there's no short answer to that, right? There's, well, you have to log in here, get a log here, or you have to listen to these hours of videos or whatever. I want to have like a, simple starting point for people who are interested. But then the other thing, which we didn't really discuss a lot of next time, but this is kind of an important idea to me, which may be a bad idea and I should talk about it. It is to promote develop some sort of analogous to the open source definition. Are you familiar with the open source definition, or is that worth spending some time talking about?
I have a feeling like I think I know what it is, but I probably really don't.
Okay,
know
fair
exactly
enough. So,
why you're making, yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is good. So you obviously heard the term open source, right?
Of course.
But and you've probably been around long enough, you know this, but like this was not a thing until the late 1990s. Before that, we had free software, which was what Richard Stallman was doing, and we had the stuff that like the Berkeley standard distribution was, but we didn't really have a word for it. It was source, because free software was like a religious thing under Richard Stallman, God bless his heart. And then there was like the Berkeley thing, which people called source available, or my favorite term, I don't know if you heard this joke, is that the corporations had copyright, which means they could keep you from doing stuff with it. Richard Stallman had copy left, which was he can keep you from not sharing it. And BSD had the copy center, which means you go down to the copy center and make as many copies as you want. And that was their philosophy of the copy center. And that plus Richard Stallman plus Eric Raymond led to this idea of open source. And right. It caught up, and then they said, okay, now people are starting to abuse the term and calling all sorts of things open source. We need to put some rigor around it. So they created an organization, the Open Source Initiative, and then they defined like these are the key characteristics that reflects the community's understanding of open source in a formal way, where we can say, like, if you're doing this, it's open source. If you're breaking this, then it's not. Right? So free distribution, source code, derived works, integrity, no discrimination, relicensing, not attached to a product, not restricting. And there, anyway, this was a emergent thing from something that the 2004, wow, that was 2004. It's 2007. Okay, that was the latest one, but it's from the early. Okay, they got many versions in the past. It's been versioned over time. And good, here's the, so they, and this is good. They have the annotated version, which explains the rationale, which is nice. And then they have, I think, the history here. So where do they keep the, where do they talk about the historical versions? Annotated OSD from the early 2000s. Oh, I see. I think the annotation wasn't kept up to date. So they actually have version 1. They don't actually have their previous versions, interestingly enough, or not somewhere that's obvious to find, which, you know, is a minor bug, but is a sort of thing. Like here, this is probably better. Like, so Debian here, they have version 1.1, and they have a link back to version 1.0. Right. So they're manually maintaining that, which would just, I guess they only have 2 versions. Not
Okay, something like that. Yeah. But by the way, I think I totally misunderstood. I since the word open source software wasn't there, I thought it was the definition that was open source, and you were referring to you were referring to open source software. By the way, I have a question. Several of my books I've published as Creative Commons. Is that must be a kissing cousin of this?
Yeah, we talked to Larry quite a bit when we were working on this. And the main difference is that Creative Commons has a fairly narrow set of rights, but a very complicated legal environment it's working in. Right, so they have like 5 dimensions, and they also have a family. So right, attribution, commercial, non-commercial, things like that. So for example, you know, a big piece of open source is by definition, it doesn't discriminate against commercial usage. Right, whereas you can always have that in a Creative Commons. That's a perfectly reasonable set of choices. And arguably, you know, that's actually probably even a better role model for this in some ways. Because I can easily imagine that, like, one of the huge achievements of Creative Commons, among many, is that they have this well-defined category of these are the things that matter, right? So they have things like attribution, derived works, and like commercial. These are the things that people care about. They give them buckets. And so, you know, it would be amazing if we could come up with sort of the decision points. Is when you're building a datocratic community. All right, so the idea is that, so I guess that's probably the next, and the reason for having that is this idea of rating communities on how datocratic their decision making something like this, right? This is the data, I guess that is all A's. Yeah, no, Datocracy, putting an O in there, Datocratic. And so the idea is that we could come up with a set of criteria, and let's just make this 2022 goals. And that we can then define our communities, governance, and rate ourselves versus the definition.
You want to fix the word starting in the second sentence there under the word 50?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just patiently waiting for it.
Teach.
Okay.
Hey, we're in the dictionary now.
Yeah, I was hoping for that too.
Yay. Alert Merriam-Webster. So And then goal for 23, of course, is that 2023 is to get the word datocratic and datocracy actually into real dictionaries, so it becomes a pop cultural phenomena. But this is kind of the thing that I am focusing toward, and why I think having this document as a thing that we are iterating on in public in a very lightweight manner would get us there. And that's kind of like my whole, not just sort of what I'm wanting to do by starting here, but this is where I want to get to. And since
do you envisage this as having the volume of what we just saw, about one page?
I think so. That is my hope.
I'm a one-page guy, so that's good.
I like one page. Yeah, I think that it is at least the top level, whether it is the full right. That's the whole point of having this idea of a wiki or an accordion type thing, where the basic statement is here, but there could be 20 pages of definitions, depending on how crazy we go with this, right? Because you can, as you grow to a larger group of people, words that you used to think were obvious suddenly become in need of definition. And when you try to use it, then you realize you have to be more precise. And eventually we may need to add, all these other pieces of language, right? So that'll be like scales, stakeholders, right? Et cetera, right? There's all these things that language is really good for when you actually use it in anger to try and solve real problems. But the goal is to have something that is and I think that's actually a good point. There should be like a one-page top-level summary.
With probably hot links to
With many
more
links.
detail.
Links in detail pages. Yeah. So that's
there's something floating around in my mind. I envisage the principles as applicable to an enormous range of small, medium, and large scale efforts. Any community could organize itself along these. I mean, a community of say 50 people or 5,000 people, or a county or a city or a sports club. Okay, so there's almost anything. So in other words, the opportunity to experiment with small communities to see how this works is something we could try to get going early. We don't look for changing a nation, but we might look to, changing a society like the IEEE is take a really.
Well, I think I would say even smaller than that. So this is the pitch. I talked about this with Ernest
Yeah.
when I taught that podcast, but I think the interesting, so the proposal is that the initial target market, can't spell the word initial, target market is crypto governance, crypto communities.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that word crypto means.
Okay, so this is okay. Let's use the term. I'll use another even more ill-defined term, which is Web3. But there is a Cambrian explosion of new coins, blockchains, things like this, which the old knock against Web2 used to be that they have plenty of users but no money. The knock against Web3 is they have tons of money and no users.
Okay.
Right? Is you have all these people, everyone creates a coin, people buy one coin for $10,000 and suddenly the whole network's worth, $20, $50 million, based on one transaction and 20 people, which is silly, but it's still interesting because there's money there. And so the idea is that Web3 communities, there's like huge numbers of them.
Okay, so you meant crypto in that sense.
Yeah, sorry, yes, not the cryptography, the crypto,
yeah, blockchain,
cryptocurrency, crypto coins.
And blockchain word needs to get in there somewhere, does it? Blockchain.
Sure. Crypto implies blockchain, but
yeah, whatever. Like
but I thought both words are.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's huge numbers of these communities, new and existing communities. And interestingly, they have tons of public data, right? By definition, everything that happens on the blockchain is public data to anyone who's on the chain. They have, lots of money at stake, and they are
And at stake,
At-
not end.
I'm sorry, and they have governance is vital and rarely well defined,
Interesting.
right?
I,
Because
yeah, I,
the thing
ne-
yeah,
I
'cause
never
like-
thought in this path here, but all right, good.
Yeah, so the idea is that when you create a crypto coin, basically all you have is a protocol or a white paper and governance, right? Who gets to decide who updates the protocol? Who checks to make sure that, like Bitcoin is in theory decentralized, but in practice, there's 3 actors who make up over 50% of the market, right? And so there's some, fascinating, there's some, prior metrics to draw upon. So there's things like the Gini coefficient, right, which is the inequality in a system. There's the Nakamura, I think, coefficient,
Yeah.
which is the number needed to subvert. Like that. And it's like, there's interest in these types of questions, but we could potentially come up with something else or some overarching thing that encapsulates and say, hey, and then, we could literally charge people to say, hey, give us some coin and we will run an auction and we will rate your service. And then you'll have a public certified thing saying relative to this version of the Datocracy definition, this is how, Datocratic your community is. And when you have all these new chains that want to establish credibility, this would be a great way to, create and model best practices. And yeah, it's a bunch of people who've got very little to lose and a lot to gain by participating with us. But once you got a few $1 million going here or a few $1 billion here and there, suddenly this becomes something that corporations and governments and, groups like the IEEE would set up and take notice of. So that's the idea of how Datocratic.
By the way, I want to bring up an idea here. I don't mind if we select this market as a path in, but I'd like to open up a second branch, which is quite simply anybody who volunteers to make a Datocracy version for other things is welcome to start with us. In other words, I wouldn't want to have everyone say, oh, we are not crypto, therefore we'll do nothing with these people for the next 10 years. I say, welcome any initiative to explore Datocracy in practice.
Yeah. Right. So anybody who wants to talk to us, we'll talk to them. But this would be the one that we target, that we go out and talk to them first.
Okay,
right?
Fine.
Yeah, for outreach. Yeah, that's an absolutely thing, right? Like Andrew Yang swings by and wants to chat with us. Hey, we'd love to take over the forward party for you and make it more Datocratic, but I'm probably not going to try to get there yet. The other thing about Web3 is that they also have they are the Wild West and used to walking over broken glass, as someone said. Right, that's one of the things they tell you in startup school. You want to find the customers who are so desperate for your solution to their problem that they will walk over broken glass in order to get it. And crypto currently involves a lot of walking over broken glass. And that's like our kind of people. So that's the plan. When I will build this, I do not know, but I've got some ideas. And I should. I think I told you about Igwet. Didn't I? I don't know if I was able to give a demo because it was broken last time. But basically,
sorry, I didn't hear the word you told me about, and there's a word I didn't hear.
Yes. Okay.
The name.
Let's use this one prior.
The name of it.
Yeah, Igwet. So let me pull that up here.
Oh, EGWT. Okay, I don't recall this, but okay.
Okay, so, and I don't know if this is working because I haven't used it for real in a while. So it may just crash when I try to log in. But
No,
this is a web app I built and actually sold, I had one subscriber during COVID, a church that needed a way to register. And oh yeah, I'm signing in with Google, not my credentials, silly me. Been that long. And you mentioned you were doing something with RDF, right? When you're looking at
yes.
that. So basically what I ended up building, which refuses to talk to me, so I won't be able to show you, was basically, it's a lightweight RDF editor. In that it's a series of nodes, and you can describe the nodes, and then you can add relationships between any two nodes. So node could be a user, one node is a user, one node is a group, and you could have a member of relation, or you could have an address for relation, or you can have a host for an event relation. And so there's all these nodes and all these edges, which it's been crashing lately, so I probably won't be able to show you. But the idea is that you basically have nodes and edges, and you can build arbitrary structures on top of it, including, let me just try one more thing. It's probably going to blow up anyway. Oh, no, here we go. Yeah, you can see a list of nodes, of event nodes. And you can see this is a nicely formatted page, but it's really just a bunch of keys and values. These are sort of like the static ones, and then there's a bunch of links to different things. So these are all the contacts that are associated with that. And everyone can like register and it'll track who showed up and who hasn't. And in theory, you can send a text message to those who forgot to register like that. Probably shouldn't show too many people's email addresses on a public site. I forgot how to crop that part. But yeah, the idea is that I've got this thing that's already doing this sort of node and edge network. And so adding Planguage type definition seems like a straightforward task, not a trivial task, but straightforward. So that was the idea.
Okay.
So,
good.
all right, that's pretty much all I had to say, and make sure that this kind of makes sense to you guys. I've got a lot going on. Amusingly, while this is all happening, my company is having a major project that's due on the 22nd of February. And all of a sudden, my boss and I have been trying to beat the organization to adopting modern data practices, but they keep putting it off. And suddenly this is now the thing that everyone in the company is waiting for, is this master data-driven pipeline reporting system. And that's what I'm spending all my time on now this month. And so between now and then, I'm going to be a little busy, but I want to at least get this idea in place, and I'll crank on it. And sometime in the next month, I will resurface and show you what I've got, and we can talk about what to do next.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you all very much.
I sent you an email, and it contains two things. One is a contact with Marcin in Poland now, who has built a little miniature val plan or Planguage thing called ManageLens, ManageLens.com. So that's a very simple example of something, and he might welcome cooperation of some sort. The other is the reference back to Graphmetrics, which is all this RDF stuff, and you should, they keep on saying they're within 2 weeks of announcing saleable products, but typical startup.
The old joke is that's pretty much what is the entire story of the semantic web. We've been 2 weeks away from real world usage. Yes.
Anyway, but Graphmetrics is a platform we could probably use to have a super sexy, modern, secure platform for things. It's highly related to Planguage, and my son and I are major investors there. My son is a co-founder, and we both put some money in it, and it is, if you go take a look at it, it is quite amazing technology. But you don't have time to look at it now, so no, but just you're aware it exists, and we're part of that, and we might want to plug into it as a host. of some
Yeah,
kind.
certainly the whole point is have data export and import. All right.
Yep.
I gotta go, and I should probably trim off the last half of this video to avoid all the email addresses. I
Oh,
won't
yeah.
say anything useful now. Thank you all so much. Have a great month. I will talk to you sometime in